vivid versions.
The corner booth at Archway Tavern had become something of a ritual. Every Thursday at 6:30, Tyler Brennan would slide into the worn leather seat, order the smoked brisket sandwich, and let the week's tension drain away over good food and better conversation. His friend Cameron was already there, nursing a craft beer from one of those fictional microbreweries that seemed to multiply in Boulder like rabbits. "You're predictable as hell, you know that?" Cameron said, grinning as Tyler sat down. "Consistency isn't a character flaw," Tyler replied, signaling the server. "Didn't say it was. Just pointing out that I could set my watch by you." Tyler shrugged. At 34, he learned that discipline and structure weren't boring. They were freedom. They meant he could build the life he wanted without constantly reacting to chaos. His software consulting business ran smoothly because he'd built systems that worked. His fitness routine kept him healthy because he showed up even when he didn't feel like it. His relationships stayed drama-free because he chose people carefully and communicated clearly. Well, most relationships. So, Cameron leaned forward. "You seeing anyone?" Tyler hesitated. He'd been seeing someone for about 3 months now. Vanessa Chun. They'd met at a friend's dinner party in Denver. One of those casual gatherings where 8 people crowded around a too-small table and passed dishes family style. She'd been sharp, funny, confident. A graphic designer with her own studio downtown. Their first few dates had been effortless. "Maybe," Tyler said. Maybe means yes in Tyler speak. Cameron laughed. "What's she like?" "Smart. Creative. We have good conversations." "But..." Tyler paused. Was there a but? "Things have been fine. Good, even." Vanessa was attractive, successful, interesting. But lately, something had shifted. Nothing he could point to directly. Just a feeling, like a frequency that was slightly off-tune. "No, but," he said finally. "It's good." Cameron didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. The first Real crack appeared 2 weeks later. Tyler and Vanessa were at her apartment in Capitol Hill, a renovated loft with exposed brick and those industrial fixtures that cost a fortune to look unfinished. She'd cooked dinner, pasta with homemade sauce, and they'd settled on her couch with wine. "I was thinking," Vanessa said, running her fingers along the stem of her glass, "maybe we could go to Portland next month. There's a design conference I want to check out." "Portland's great," Tyler said, "but I got that project deadline the 3rd week. Probably need to stay local." She set down her glass. "You always have a deadline." "Not always. Just right now. Clients paying premium for early delivery. You could push it back." "I could," Tyler agreed. "But I don't want to. I committed to a timeline." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you notice how you always prioritize work over us?" The word always triggered something in Tyler's mind. It was a tell, that kind of absolutist language. People used it when they were building a case rather than having a conversation. "I don't think that's accurate," he said evenly. "We've done plenty of trips. Remember Aspen last month? That was last month. I'm talking about now. About this pattern where you hide behind your commitments instead of being present." "Hide." Interesting word choice. Tyler kept his expression neutral. "I'm not hiding. I'm managing my professional obligations." "That's different." "Is it?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you use work as a shield. Like you're afraid of actually getting close." He took a slow breath. This was escalating faster than the situation warranted. A simple scheduling conflict had somehow become an analysis of his emotional capacity. "I think we're having 2 different conversations," Tyler said. "You're upset I can't make Portland work. That's fair. But turning it into something deeper isn't productive. See? That's what you do. You deflect. You make everything about logic and productivity instead of just feeling something." Tyler felt the conversation slipping into a pattern he recognized. He'd seen this dynamic before, years ago, in a relationship that had taught him exactly what he didn't want. "I feel plenty," he said quietly. "I just don't perform emotions on demand to prove they exist." Vanessa's eyes flashed. "That's cold, Tyler. You know that's cold." He didn't respond. Instead, he noticed how quickly she'd pivoted from her disappointment to his character. How the focus had shifted from the actual issue, a scheduling conflict, to his supposed emotional deficiency. File that away, he thought. The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. Small disagreements would bloom into larger referendums on Tyler's personality. When he declined to attend her friend's birthday party because he had an early client call, he was choosing isolation. When he suggested they split a weekend between her activities and his climbing trip, he was keeping score and unable to be spontaneous. Tyler started paying closer attention, not defensively, but analytically. He noticed that Vanessa's complaints had a common thread. They all reframed his boundaries and preferences as pathologies. His need for alone time, emotional unavailability, his calm demeanor during disagreements, coldness, his habit of thinking before responding, calculated manipulation. It was subtle at first, but once he started seeing the pattern, it was everywhere. They were at dinner at Meridian Grill, an upscale spot in Cherry Creek, when things came to a head. Vanessa had invited another couple, her friends, people Tyler had met once or twice. The conversation was pleasant enough until Vanessa's friend, Jessica, mentioned she was planning a surprise party for her husband. "Tyler would hate that," Vanessa said, laughing. "He needs everything planned 6 weeks in advance. No room for spontaneity." It was said lightly like a joke, but Tyler caught the edge underneath. "I don't mind surprises," he said. "I just prefer having some structure to my calendar." "Structure," Vanessa repeated, making air quotes. "He means walls. Everything's got to be on his terms." Jessica and her husband exchanged uncomfortable glances. Tyler kept his voice even. "That's not accurate. Having preferences isn't the same as demanding control." "See?" Vanessa gestured at him. "This is what I mean. Everything's a debate. You can't just let something go. You made a statement about me that wasn't true. I corrected it. That's not debating, it's clarifying." "It's exhausting," Vanessa said. She was smiling, but her tone had an edge now. Dating someone who's always in their head, who can't just be without analyzing everything. Tyler felt something crystallize in that moment. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a rough patch. This was who Vanessa was when she didn't get her way. Someone who reframed healthy behavior as dysfunction to maintain the upper hand. He could feel Jessica and her husband's discomfort, could see how Vanessa was performing for them, building her narrative. He set down his fork carefully. "I think we should probably talk about this privately." "There you go again," Vanessa said, shutting down, controlling the conversation. Tyler looked at her fully then, really looked at her, and he made his decision. "You're right," he said. "Let's not do this here." They finished dinner in strained small talk. Tyler paid his portion of the check. He always kept finances separate, a habit Vanessa had also criticized as keeping score, and they left. In the parking lot, Vanessa turned to him. "So, are you going to talk about what just happened? Or are you going to go silent like you always do?" "I'm going to go home," Tyler said. "And I think we should take some space." "Space?" She laughed bitterly. "That's your answer to everything. Distance. Walls." "No," Tyler said. "Boundaries. There's a difference." "God, Tyler, do you hear yourself? You sound like a self-help book." He didn't take the bait. "I've noticed something over the past few weeks. Every quality I have that doesn't serve your immediate preference gets relabeled as a flaw. My discipline becomes rigidity. My calm becomes coldness. My independence becomes emotional unavailability. Because that's what they are. You dress up your issues in fancy language, but at the core, you're just afraid of intimacy." Tyler shook his head slowly. "I'm not afraid of intimacy. I'm opposed to dysfunction. Those aren't the same thing. This is exactly what I mean. You're so controlled, so measured. It's like you don't even feel anything. I feel plenty, Tyler said. I just don't confuse drama with depth. Vanessa's face flushed. That's such a Tyler thing to say. So superior. So above it all. He could feel her trying to hook him, trying to provoke a reaction that would validate her narrative. The old Tyler, maybe 5 years ago, might have engaged, might have tried to defend himself or prove his emotional capacity. But he learned. You couldn't reason someone out of a position they'd emotionalize themselves into. I think we want different things, Tyler said. That's okay. But I'm not going to keep having the same circular conversation where my healthy behaviors get pathologized. Healthy? Vanessa's voice rose. You think what you're doing is healthy? You're completely shut off, Tyler. You're so terrified of being vulnerable that you've built this fortress around yourself and convince yourself its boundaries. I'm not terrified, Tyler said quietly. I'm selective. There's a difference. You know what? Fine. Go. Run away like you always do when things get real. Tyler almost smiled at that. He wasn't running. He was walking calmly, deliberately, away from a situation he'd accurately assessed as incompatible with his well-being. Take care of yourself, Vanessa, he said. He got in his car and drove home. The next morning, his phone lit up with texts. I can't believe you just walked away like that. We need to talk about your pattern of avoidance. You're so scared of conflict you'd rather throw away something good. Classic narcissist behavior. Look it up. Tyler read them without emotion. Then he did something he'd learned to do early and often. He blocked her number. Not out of anger, not out of hurt, but because he recognized the pattern. This was the post-breakup campaign where she tried to hook him back in, either through guilt or provocation or manufacture crisis. He'd seen it before. The frantic texts, the emails, the messages through mutual friends. Some men would engage, would try to defend themselves, would get drawn back into the cycle. Tyler just closed the door. Cameron called that afternoon. Vanessa just texted me asking if you're okay. I'm fine. She says you had a breakdown, that you're going through something, and pushed her away. Tyler almost laughed. Of course she did. The narrative had to be that he was damaged, that he'd self-sabotaged, that she was the concerned ex trying to help. I'm completely fine, Tyler said. We weren't compatible. I ended it. She made it sound a lot more dramatic than that. I'm sure she did. Cameron was quiet for a moment. You want to talk about it? Not particularly. But I appreciate you checking. You're a weird dude, Tyler. But I respect your boundaries. Tyler smiled at that. Thanks. The next few days were instructive. Tyler watched the narrative spread through their mutual social circle. Vanessa had gotten there first, framing the story her way. He heard through various channels that he was emotionally unavailable, that he'd sabotaged the relationship, that he had intimacy issues. Some people, the ones who knew him well, saw through it. Cameron, his business partner, Rachel, his sister, Morgan. Others accepted Vanessa's version uncritically. That was fine too. Tyler had learned that how people responded to one-sided narratives told him everything he needed to know about their judgment. He didn't defend himself, didn't issue corrections, didn't engage with the story at all. That, predictably, made him look guilty to people who wanted to believe Vanessa's version. His silence became proof of his coldness, his unwillingness to work on things. Tyler found it fascinating how the same behavior, his calm, his boundaries, his refusal to perform emotion, got weaponized depending on who was interpreting it. To Vanessa and her allies, it was evidence of his dysfunction. To the people who actually knew him, it was exactly who he'd always been. 2 weeks after the breakup, he got an email, long detailed, explaining all the ways he'd failed the relationship, how his walls had prevented real intimacy, how his need for control had stifled her spontaneity. how his emotional unavailability had left her feeling alone even when they were together. Tyler read it once. Then he moved it to a folder and forgot about it. He didn't respond. Responses fed the cycle. They gave the other person ammunition, new material to reframe and weaponize. Silence was clean. A month later, Tyler was back in his Thursday booth at Archway Tavern. Cameron joined him, sliding into the opposite seat with his usual craft beer. "You doing okay?" Cameron asked. "Yeah, good, actually. I heard Vanessa's dating someone new. Some finance guy." Tyler felt exactly nothing about that information. Good for her. Doesn't bother you? Why would it? Cameron studied him. Most guys would be at least a little bothered. I'm not most guys. No, Cameron agreed. You're really not. They ordered food. Tyler got his usual brisket sandwich. The conversation drifted to work, to Cameron's latest dating disaster, to whether the Colorado Rockies would ever be good again. It was easy, comfortable, the kind of friendship that didn't require performance or explanation. Later, walking to his car, Tyler thought about Vanessa's central accusation, that his boundaries were walls, that his calm was coldness, that his discipline was rigidity. The thing was, she wasn't entirely wrong about the facts. He did have strong boundaries. He was calm in conflicts. He did value discipline. Where she was wrong was in the interpretation. She'd looked at those qualities and decided they were deficiencies because they didn't serve her needs. In her framework, a good partner was someone who was flexible enough to bend to her preferences, someone who would prioritize her emotional state over his own judgment, someone who could be molded through criticism and guilt. Tyler had never been that person, would never be that person, and he was completely at peace with that. 3 months later, Tyler met someone new. Her name was Isabel Reeves, and she was a litigation attorney who'd moved to Boulder from Phoenix to join a firm specializing in water rights. They met at a climbing gym. Tyler was there for his regular Saturday session, and Isabel was struggling with a route rated just above her current ability. "You're muscling it," Tyler said, watching her attempt. "That crux needs technique, not strength." She dropped down, breathing hard. "Easy for you to say. Want a pointer?" She considered him for a moment, then nodded. Tyler walked her through the sequence, where to shift her weight, which hold a trust, how to use the wall's angle instead of fighting it. Isabel tried again. This time, she flowed through the section that had stopped her before. "Holy shit," she said, reaching the top. "That actually worked. Usually does." They got coffee after, then dinner the next week, then a climbing trip to Garden of the Gods the week after that. Isabel was different from Vanessa in fundamental ways. When Tyler said he needed a Saturday morning to himself to work, she said, "Cool, I'll hit the trails." When he was direct in conversations, she appreciated his clarity instead of calling it cold. When he maintained his routines and structure, she built her own alongside his instead of demanding he abandon his. She had her own career, her own friends, her own life. She didn't need Tyler to fill gaps or validate her existence. She wanted him as an addition to a life that was already full, not as a solution to one that felt empty. 6 weeks in, they were at Tyler's place. He'd made dinner, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, and they were on the couch, talking about their weeks. "I like this," Isabel said. "The salmon." She laughed. "Well, yes, but I meant this. Us. The way we fit together without either of us having to contort ourselves." Tyler felt something warm settle in his chest. "Yeah, I like it too. My ex used to give me shit for working too much," Isabel said. "He wanted me to be more present, which basically meant being available whenever he decided he needed attention. How'd you handle that?" "I left." She said it matter-of-factly. Some people mistake having standards for being difficult. I learned to spot the difference. Tyler nodded slowly. "I had something similar recently. Different specifics, same pattern. Let me guess. Your boundaries became walls. Your calm became coldness. Your independence became emotional unavailability. He looked at her sharply. How did you? Because that's the playbook, Isabel said. When people want to control you, but know they can't do it directly, they pathologize your healthy behaviors. Make you defend yourself for having standards. And when you don't defend yourself, then you're proving them right by being dismissive. She smiled without humor. It's a rigged game. The only way to win is not to play. Tyler felt something click into place. Here was someone who understood. Not because he'd explained it, but because she'd lived it herself. What made you realize it was a pattern? He asked. Therapy mostly. Good therapy, not the kind where they pathologize your strengths to keep you dependent. Isabel took a sip of wine. I learned that some people are threatened by anyone who doesn't need them. They mistake interdependence for dependence. When you show up as a whole person instead of a half that needs completing, they frame it as a deficit. How do you tell the difference between healthy boundaries and actual emotional unavailability? Boundaries are I need space to recharge, Isabel said. Emotional unavailability is I need space because intimacy terrifies me and I'll sabotage anything that gets close. The first one is sustainable. The second one is just fear wearing a fancy hat. Tyler thought about that. I think I know the difference. But I also know that to the wrong person, they look identical. Exactly. Which is why you have to be selective about who you let interpret your behavior. She leaned back against the couch. The right person sees your boundaries and respects them. The wrong person sees them and tries to erode them. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Tyler felt a level of ease with Isabel that he hadn't experienced in years. Not because she was low maintenance, she wasn't, but because she didn't require him to be someone he wasn't. At 8 months, Isabel met Tyler's family. His sister Morgan pulled him aside during dinner at their parents' house in Fort Collins. I like her, Morgan said. Good. Me too. No, I really like her. She's nothing like Vanessa. Tyler raised an eyebrow. You didn't like Vanessa? I thought she was exhausting. Always needed to be the center of attention. Always had some drama. Morgan poured herself more wine. But you seemed happy, so I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't unhappy, Tyler said carefully. But I also wasn't myself. Yeah, I could tell. You got quieter around her. Like you were always managing her mood instead of just existing. Tyler had noticed that too, in retrospect. How much energy he'd spent trying to prevent Vanessa's next reframing, her next criticism. With Isabel, you're just Tyler, Morgan continued. Same dry humor, same terrible dad jokes, same guy who builds elaborate spreadsheets for fun. They're not for fun. They're useful. Morgan laughed. See, that's what I mean. You don't apologize for who you are. Later, driving Isabel back to Boulder, she asked, your sister interrogate you about me? In the nicest possible way. What did she say? That I seem like myself around you. Isabel smiled. You are yourself around me. That's kind of the point. The 1-year mark came and went without fanfare. No dramatic declarations. No pressure to define the relationship. They were already defined. 2 whole people who'd chosen to build something together without either of them having to diminish themselves to fit. They moved in together at 14 months. A house in North Boulder with a yard and a garage Tyler converted into a home gym. Isabel's books filled the shelves. Tyler's climbing gear took over the spare room. They built a life that accommodated both of them without either having to squeeze. On a random Thursday evening, they were cooking dinner together. Isabel was chopping vegetables while Tyler handled the stir-fry. The radio played something jazzy and instrumental. I was thinking, Isabel said. Dangerous. She threw a piece of bell pepper at him. I was thinking that this is the first relationship I've had where I don't feel like I'm constantly being tested. Tyler looked at her. Tested how? Like with my ex, There was always this sense that I had to prove I cared enough. Work late? Obviously, the relationship wasn't a priority. Need alone time? Obviously, I was pulling away. Have an opinion that differed from his? Obviously, I was being difficult. And with me? With you, I'm just Isabel. I work late when I need to. You don't take it personally. I need alone time. You get it because you need it too. We disagree. We talk it through like adults. She scraped the vegetables into the pan. It's shockingly low drama. Is that a complaint? God, no. It's a revelation. Turns out relationships don't have to be performances. Tyler flipped the contents of the pan. I had someone tell me once that my boundaries were walls, that my calm was coldness, that my independence was emotional unavailability. Vanessa. He nodded. They talked about previous relationships in broad strokes, but not in detail. What did you say? Isabel asked. I told her she'd relabeled every positive quality I had as a flaw, that said everything I needed to know. Isabel was quiet for a moment. That must have been hard. Not really. Once I saw the pattern, the decision was easy. But still, being with someone who treats your strengths as weaknesses, that's crazy making. It would have been if I'd stayed, Tyler agreed. But I didn't. How'd you know to leave? Tyler thought about that. Because I learned a long time ago that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who requires me to be smaller. Isabel kissed him then, quick and soft. I'm glad you learned that, because I really like full-size Tyler. At 2 years, Isabel was offered a partnership track at her firm. It would mean longer hours, more travel, higher stakes. They talked about it over breakfast on a Saturday morning. It's going to affect our time together, Isabel said. I'll be traveling more, working later. Okay, Tyler said. That's it? Just okay. You're good at what you do. This is a good opportunity. Why would I stand in the way of that? My ex would have made a thing, would have turned it into a referendum on the relationship. I'm not your ex. No, Isabel said softly. You're really not. She took the partnership track. Tyler adjusted his schedule to accommodate hers. Some weeks they saw each other less. Some weeks they made time for long weekends in the mountains. It flowed and shifted naturally because neither of them needed the other to be something they weren't. At 3 years, Tyler proposed. Not at a restaurant or during a vacation or at some orchestrated moment designed for social media. Just on a Tuesday evening after dinner while they were doing dishes. I think we should get married, Tyler said. Isabel looked at him, hands full of soap suds. That's the most Tyler proposal ever. Is that a no? That's a yes, you beautiful weirdo. She dried her hands and kissed him. But I'm picking the ring. Deal. They got married 4 months later at a small ceremony in Garden of the Gods. 30 people, mostly family and close friends. Cameron was Tyler's best man. Morgan officiated. The vows were simple. No flowery language about completing each other or two halves making a whole. Just 2 people promising to keep choosing each other, to keep respecting each other's boundaries, to keep building a life that worked for both of them. At the reception, Morgan pulled Tyler aside. You look happy, she said. I am happy. Remember when Vanessa told everyone you were emotionally unavailable? Tyler nodded. Turns out you were just unavailable to her bullshit. Tyler laughed. That's one way to put it. The right person doesn't require you to explain yourself constantly, Morgan said. They just get it. Yeah, Tyler agreed, watching Isabel across the room, talking to his parents. Yeah, they do. Years later, Tyler would sometimes think about Vanessa's accusations, about how she'd reframed his discipline as rigidity, his calm as coldness, his boundaries as walls. He'd learned something important from that relationship. Some people will always pathologize what they can't control. They'll take your strengths, the very things that make you functional and whole, and reframe them as deficiencies. Not because you're actually deficient, but because those strengths don't serve their agenda. The test isn't whether someone criticizes you. Everyone gets criticized. The test is whether the criticism is designed to help you grow or to make you manageable. Vanessa had wanted him manageable, smaller, more pliable. Isabel wanted him whole. That was the difference. And Tyler had learned to choose wholeness every single time. He'd learned that the right person doesn't require you to defend your healthy behaviors. They recognize them, respect them, and build alongside them. He'd learned that silence in the face of bad faith accusations isn't weakness, it's wisdom. He'd learned that walking away from incompatibility isn't avoidance, it's decisiveness. Most importantly, he'd learned that being alone was infinitely better than being with someone who required him to be less than he was. Those lessons had served him well, and as he sat on his porch on a quiet Sunday morning, coffee in hand, Isabel beside him reading case files, he felt something he'd never quite felt with Vanessa. Peace. Not the absence of challenge or growth or occasional disagreement, but the peace that comes from being with someone who sees you clearly and likes what they see. Someone who doesn't need to relabel your strengths as weaknesses to feel secure. Someone who knows that boundaries aren't walls. They're the foundation on which healthy love is built. Tyler took a sip of his coffee and smiled. He made the right call. He always did.
Thanks for listening.